Welcome to the Broad Art Tell Me More Diverse Voices webinar. Today, two authors with two very different books will be sharing their stories with you. Our moderator, Carol Levers, former executive director of libraries from Kansas City, Kansas Public Library, has served in various capacities for numerous foundations, charities, and nonprofit organizations as member, president, and trustee chair. She's been the recipient of I Love My Library Award in 2010. She became the first woman and person of color to become the director of libraries for Kansas City, Kansas Public Library System. Carol, now retired, is proud to have managed 5 public libraries, a fleet of 3 mobile libraries, and 40 school libraries. Over to you, Carol.
Thank you so much, Alanita. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Broad Art for organizing this Diverse Voices webinar. Many thanks to our sponsors, Source Books and Simon & Schuster. And I also want to thank Alanita for inviting me to be the moderator year after year. I think it's about 3 or 4. I'm not so sure how many years, but I enjoyed it tremendously. I'm humbled and I feel privileged to be included, especially when diverse voices and opinions are being challenged. And not to waste so much time, I'm going to introduce our first author. We're happy to have Carolyn Huynh with us this afternoon. And we are going to discuss the book that is being released called The Family Recipes. Just a little bit about Carolyn. According to what I could glean from the internet, Carolyn Huynh loves writing about messy Asian women who never learn from their mistakes. After living up and down the West Coast, she now resides in Los Angeles with her husband and her chaotic dog.
Carol, your notes are in front of the camera.
Okay, I apologize. Where is that notes? Okay.
I want to see your lovely face.
Okay. It's funny. It's not even there. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Sorry about that. Apologize. When she's not writing, she daydreams about having iced coffee on a rooftop in Saigon. The Fortunes of Jaded Women is a debut novel and was a Good Morning America book club pick and selected as one of the best books of 2022 by NPR. And she's also busy working on another novel. Another thing just to add is that the American Good Morning America book club picked and is being adapted for television by Heyday Studios and Universal Studios. So welcome, Carolyn. And we'll start off with a question as what was the inspiration to write this book?
Thank you so much for the really lovely welcoming introduction. And also, I would love to visit your mobile library one day. Your fleet of mobile libraries sounds really fun. My sophomore book was pretty interesting. It was the first book I had written on deadline and on a pitch proposal. So a lot of the story changed throughout, but the core of it remains the same, where I was very curious about writing about the South, especially Texas, and the Vietnamese diaspora within Texas. And I was very curious about what that looked like. And, the book, The Family Recipe, it goes between contemporary and historical fiction quite a bit. But it was through my research about Southern Vietnamese diaspora that I uncovered an old lawsuit from the late 70s, early 80s about when the Vietnamese fishermen sued the KKK and they won. It's a very real lawsuit, but based off the research I did on that lawsuit, that sort of like trickled towards contemporary day. So the book goes back and forth between historical fiction and the remnants of the lawsuit to modern day with this dysfunctional family vying to win over their inheritance from their eccentric father.
What an interesting character as well, but we won't go into that right now. I'll leave it more up to you. Can you share a little bit of your process in writing, especially this book?
I am known to be very chaotic. If you know me if you had read my debut book, Fortunes of Jaded Women, there's over like 14 characters, 14 points of views. Quite similar to this family recipe, there's over like 7 points of views. I tried to cut it in half. I really like chaotic stories like that. I like big ensemble casts. It probably comes stemmed from my I'm also a playwright, so you can see the drama evolve with big ensemble casts. I like to craft. Um, but my writing style, I do not recommend doing this because it's so awful. I typically start off with the title of the book, and I know the first sentence and I know the last sentence, and those three things typically do not change throughout the process. And I try to connect point A to point B, um, and it's very chaotic where I typically write the first full draft and then I don't look back, and I'll write a second draft without ever looking at the first draft. And then by the third draft, I will try to mar the two together. I know it's very bad, and my agent has told me you make life so difficult for yourself. But that's how I try to do that. I don't outline, and I just kind of very Jesus take the wheel. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's very bad. I do not recommend it. You waste a lot of time doing that, but I think that's the only way my brain can process it.
Is there a favorite character in the book?
I have a couple of favorite characters, but I think my favorite would be Bingo, which is she's like the third youngest sister, and she's just my chaotic queer character who I love. And she's just really trying to work through her anger issues while trying to find love. So she's my favorite daughter of the family.
Is there a specific message that you want to share with your readers?
I always try, so most of my books, they do tend to deal with heavy topics, generational trauma, war trauma, PTSD. But I always try to stray away from those narratives by going from generational trauma towards generational healing. So no matter the subject matter, I always try to have a happy ending for my books. And I feel like that's my right as like the god of these worlds, where I can grant these crazy, chaotic women their own happy ending. So I think my message would be like, don't lose hope.
Okay. And how do you select the names of your characters?
This book in particular, there's a connection to the eccentric father, the patriarch, where uh, he is obsessed with the Beatles, but he thinks the Beatles are American, and of course they're not. So he names his children like very bastardized versions of the Beatles. So there's Jane, Bingo, Paulina, Georgia, but of course, like he had only daughters and like one son. So he has like these like bastardized versions names of the Beatles. And it all comes together at the end with like the family secrets revealed, with like why the son is named the way he is. But it's a bit of a red herring too. But yeah, that's where for this specific book, that's where the character names came from.
I really enjoyed the book, and so my question to you is, how do you? I mean, as some of the storyline, is it something, or is it somebody or a family that you know about, or is it just something that you created?
The book changed a lot after I did research on the historical fiction side of the lawsuit. So once I like uncover a bit more of the lawsuit, I read the nonfiction book, oh shoot, the Fisherman and the Dragon, about the KKK's presence in Texas and the harassment of the Vietnamese fishermen. But there's already been like nonfiction books and documentaries on what happened between the clash. But I was really fixated on the lawsuit itself because, when the Vietnamese fishermen sued the KKK in the late 70s, the presiding judge was a Black female judge. And so that's really why I attribute why they won the case, because of that sort of allyship. And I think a lot about how if that lawsuit were to appear in today's times, I don't think they would have won. And I think it's so crazy to think like back then, in that era, this crazy lawsuit and they won. And so I really wanted to focus on the lawsuit and the aftermath of the lawsuit, and that's when the mystery starts to unfold with the family. I didn't want to talk too much about leading up to the actual like lawsuit and the clash between them because I think that's already been covered. But what was very interesting to me was like the aftermath of the lawsuit and like how does the family survive? How does the family survive that um, while still living in like enemy territory? Yeah.
Fantastic. Was there many, or not many, was there another or a different ending that you thought about, or was that the ending that you planned originally to attain?
It definitely was different, but the sentence remained the same that ended the book. And I switched POVs in the book where the children and the father, they have third person POV, but the mother has a first person POV and her chapters. I knew I was going to end with her chapter, and I knew I was going to end with that. So that part never changed, but I think I don't typically read historical fiction. So I think I surprised myself and challenged myself by pursuing that route. But it all came together in a very chaotic way. It all comes together.
Yes, you're correct, and I appreciate that. I was just adding that question to you. Thank you. I'm going to turn over now to our second author, Kamilah Cole, and she wrote the book An Arcane Inheritance. She's a national best-selling Lodestar Hugo Award finalist and Dragon Award nominated Jamaican American author. She worked as a writer and entertainment editor at Bustle for 4 years, and her nonfiction has appeared in Marie Claire and 17. She's a graduate of New York University. Kamilah lives in the Pacific Northwest, where she usually is playing Kingdom Hearts for the 100th time, according to the research I did, quoting early SpongeBob SquarePants episodes, or crying her way through Zuko's redemption in Avatar. The Last Airbender. I'm Kamilah Cole, and according to her, she's 34 years old, and she's an author of So Let Them Burn, This Ends in Embers, and of course, this current one we're discussing today, The Arcane Inheritance. And both letter two is coming out this year in 2025. So this book is a dark academia fantasy novel, and the story follows a Jamaican American college freshman who discovers a message on her skin that hints at a forgotten magic and a dangerous secret society. Welcome, Kamilah.
Thank you so much.
First, what was the inspiration of this book?
So the inspiration of this book, believe it or not, was actually the fairy tale Sleeping Beauty. It all kind of started there because I wanted to write a Sleeping Beauty retelling, kind of where there was this girl who lived in this modern time, and then like someone comes into her world and tells her that she's actually asleep. And that like she's needed in the real world. So I was trying to make that work, but I couldn't really make it work for a long time until An Arcane Inheritance came along. And it was a culmination of several things, you know, my love for the movie Inception, my love for the Conjuring film series, but also because I felt that I had a lot I didn't really get to resolve or have closure on from my time at university. You know, NYU was an amazing experience, but the entire act of going to college in a country that I was not born in was kind of chaotic for me. And I just wanted a place to kind of let that out, and art and Arcane Inheritance became my place to sort of fictionalize some of my experiences while combining it with the fantastical that I love so much.
Share with us your process of writing.
Well, I'm still thinking about Carolyn's, actually. I think hers might haunt me for a long time because I am such a plotter. I typically will come up with I have something I want to talk about or hear something that I think is really cool. And then I will write a pitch. And then from the pitch, I will write a synopsis. From the synopsis, I will write a chapter plan. And then I will proceed to start the book and completely ignore the chapter plan. Whatever happens between me and the book, sort of happens. But the first draft tends to be beat for beat the chapter plan because I don't know the characters yet. I just know what I want them to do. And then by the time I get to the end of the first draft, I'm like, okay, I know the characters now, and they would never do some of these things. So the second draft is where the story kind of becomes a story. But I will plot for like months, weeks, years before I ever start that story. So I just cannot imagine Carolyn's process of writing an entire first draft that she never looks at again. I think that's really, really fascinating because I wish I could be a little more loose with it because I'm just so structured. And when you're on deadline, sometimes structure isn't that great of a thing.
Is there a favorite character in your book?
Oh, yes. Aside from the main character, because I try whenever I'm writing a book to make sure that my favorite character is the character that we are following because otherwise, if I have a preferred character other than the main character, then it's like, why are they the main character then? So aside from the main character, I would say that my favorite character is her love interest. His name is Hudson Graves. He is the school golden boy. He came from a family, a black family that managed to regain wealth after they were unenslaved after the Civil War. So he came from that on one side, and then on the other side, comes from a very wealthy, like founding family in America. And he's very torn between his various worlds. He's very like grouchy, he's very snobbish, he dyes his hair blonde to sort of fit in a little bit more. And I just really liked him because the mystery of his help in the story, I'm trying not to spoil it. This help in the story and the sides of Ellery that he brings out. He is her academic rival and he challenges her quite a bit. It made their dynamic very interesting to write from his end because she doesn't know half of the things that I know about him.
Is there a specific message that you want to share with your readers?
Yes, I think I wrote this book. At the heart of this book, I think, is just a questioning of the American dream. Especially for me, like me, Ellery is a first generation Jamaican immigrant. She was born in Jamaica and she came over, and then started going to school here. And I feel like when you are, a part of the diaspora, there are certain things, certain career paths that you kind of get pushed onto as the successful career path. Like Ellery wanted to be a journalist, but her family was like, you should be a lawyer. There's money in law, like that's the set career path. So I think going into this book, I just wanted to talk about the American dream, the immigrant experience, and how um, higher education is supposed to be our key to a better, more equitable life, and how that's not always the truth because there are other keys. There are socioeconomic keys, there are intelligence quotas, there are all these things that are in our way that are not necessarily our fault. And so once we can be like releasing ourselves from the shackles of thinking that society is this fair thing, then we can find our true power in what we're good at and what we're interested in. So I guess what I want people to take from this is, find your true power and don't let society tell you what you should be.
Yeah, I'm going to die a little bit. I'm originally from South Africa, and I'm the first generation South African born. And when I came here, I wrote back to my mom that I was going to pursue librarianship, and she was appalled. You don't do that. You have to be a lawyer, doctor, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And I'm thinking it's not what my heart tells me. And I am happy and glad that I pursued what I wanted to do because I retired a happy person. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yep.
How do you select the names of your characters?
I tend to go for names that I just kind of like. They don't really have like a hidden meaning for me. I think that Ellery went through a couple of name changes before I like settled on hers. I don't know what it means. I just really like the way the name Ellery Morgan sounded. And then Hudson, his last name is Graves, and his name was kind of specifically chosen because the Graves is also the name of the library that his family donated.
Yes.
Which they call it the Graves because it's modeled after the catacombs of Paris. So you go
Mhm.
into the library and then the entire library goes underground instead of above ground. So he got that name because I liked the idea of there being a library called the Graves because doesn't studying feel like burying yourself alive sometimes?
Yeah,
And I also just really love libraries. So of course, like the libraries in the book are kind of like a character onto themselves. So yeah, I really just go through Nameberry, think baby names, you
right.
know, and just find names that I like.
Understand that. Although it's kind of parallel to your personal storyline. So, what I'm going to ask is were you planning a different ending and you just decided this was the best one?
I was actually. Okay, so originally the story ended, I'm just gonna say differently. And then my editor had an idea. I like Carolyn, I like a happy ending. I like a hopeful resolution. And my editor was like, how about if we don't do that? Um, she was like, because she likes a more open-ended ending. She likes a more bittersweet ending. And so we managed to find a compromise that I think is both hopeful and very open-ended. So it is different from what I originally planned for the characters, but when I got to the end, I was like, this feels right. This feels good. This feels like it's the story that I wanted to tell, and I just needed somebody to tease it out of me. So yeah, the ending did change.
Fantastic, great work. I just struggled at first to start your book. It took me a while, and I was like, I've got a couple of days before I do this. I need to read the book. And I struggled every time through the introduction, and it just didn't have me. But once I got through that past the first chapter, I mean, it was just free flowing, and I just ran with, and it was very, very interesting. It helped me. I did it in 1.5 days, so
Oh
that's
gosh,
really
thank
good. So
you.
thank
Thank you
you,
so much.
thank you, Elenita. Is there any other questions that we have?
Do you either of you want to talk a little bit more about your book, or do you have questions for each other or questions from our attendees?
So
No?
Karen, when you have a title, does it not change from when you come up to it to when the book is published? They don't change your titles?
They do. They do. My first book, my debut book was actually called, we sold it as The Killjoy Luck Club,
Uh,
Oh,
but I think they didn't want to go against any legalese with Amy Tan and things like that, which I totally understand. And the second book, this book, The Failure Suite, they actually it was originally sold as The Breadwinner, which I deeply love the title. I think I love a good double entendre for titles, with but sadly we lost it due to sales and marketing. So okay. It's okay. I hold very dear the titles I come up with because that really is the roadmap for me, especially if it has like a double entendre attached to it.
I love that. I'm so bad at naming books. So whenever it comes to sales conference and they're like, we're thinking we might want to change a title, I'm like, good, do it.
I have to say, like, your writing process freaks me out.
Writing
Yeah,
process
never.
freaks me.
Yeah, I could never do that. I could never outline like so. Yeah, I can't do what you do. Yeah,
I
that makes me claustrophobic, actually. Yeah.
And like literally I've tried to write a book without having an outline, just like get in there and see what happens. And I always get stalled like one, maybe two chapters in because I'm like, I don't know what comes next. What do I do? So I think your process is just so interesting and so like really cool.
I think it's a time waster, but that's okay.
Listen, my favorite thing about writing books is that everybody seems to have a different journey. Everyone seems to have a different method. And at the end of the day, we are all producing like really, really good content from our brains, which is really great. So I could never do what you do, but we both got books out. So something's
That's
clearly
true.
working.
That's true. There's
Yeah.
there's no right or wrong way, and I always appreciate how a book is made in the
Yeah.
end product.
And you
I,
both have public or written wonderful books with very completely different stories and
Yes.
different origins, which makes it very interesting. And you can see that however you're writing, that's your creative process where you come to the end of the story where you build from that, which is very interesting. Well, thank you very much. And we thank you, the sponsor, Simon & Schuster and Source Books. Books can be purchased at Brodart. And Carol, thank you very much. And everyone that has attended or that has signed up to attend will receive a copy of this recording.